Hey, Kellan. So, thank you for joining me. We were talking just now about the process of healing your heartache to move through that and get to the things that we really need to do here in life. So, if you could just share, with me your experience of that.
I love that topic because I just finished writing a book on forgiveness. And at the beginning of that, I note that even from our earliest moments, we have heartache in one version or another, right? We get hungry or we have messy clothes pants, and or we fall off the bed or whatever it is. And then those are physical things. And then as we get a little older, we have emotional things where things don't go like we want to, or somebody's mean to us, and all this stuff collectively. And then later, as we grow up, it gets worse. We do dumb things or bad things, or we be selfish or cruel, and then we are angry at ourselves for it. Or we've had people do things to us, abusive, people have done things to us, beat us or sexually abuse us or whatever. And we have this pile of stuff that happens to us accidentally, on purpose, and stuff that we did accidentally or on purpose. And so the way I think of it is it accumulates this big pile of rocks in our backpack, right? And one pile is like one color, I guess, and it's the justice that ought to be served on all those people that did horrible and awful things to us. And we're feeling that right now in the world. Like we have this situation going on in Europe where unspeakable things are happening, and people get angry, and there's and we're not empowered individually to go fix it, right? Or the other kind of rocks is we've done things, and I had a pile of those. I had long years of addiction and 35 years of depression where I never talked to anyone, and I was married and divorced 3 times, and I was in and out of rehab and made a lot of money and lived a dual life, and just where I felt horrifically guilty, like I could never fix whatever. And that's another pile of rocks. And so whichever pile you're carrying, to get to your point, until we empty the backpack and we lay down the burden, we are inhibited, prohibited, or slowed down at the very least from tapping into the divine energy that's available to us, accessing our divine gifts, and truly loving and serving others around us as we both want to and as we could, but can't as long as we're carrying that pile of stuff. So the process of forgiveness or healing your heart or rehabbing your heart, whatever language you want to use, is important, it's essential, and it's something we all need to do on purpose, because it sure as heck isn't going to happen accidentally.
For sure, there has to be intention around that. So, could you share maybe a story of something that you've overcome and, how that propelled you into the work that you're doing now?
I started life as a uh, in a normal house, or what appeared to be a normal house, two-parent home, middle class ish, in the San Francisco Bay Area. And the difficulty for me came because my mom was very young when she got married, and she had a very rigid view of how things should be. It was tied to religion and behavior, and her way of enforcing that on her children was physical punishment. So she beat the crap out of me. She did stuff in discipline that today would be felony child abuse. I grew up with the idea, and of course it was all secret. You can't talk about it, and every kid goes through that, right? I grew up with the idea that I was not good enough, and I never would be, and that my whole life should be appropriately spent in trying to be the person I was, quote, supposed to be. So two things came out of that. One, I believed with all my heart I wasn't good enough and never would be. And two, I believed that I needed to make my mom was right, and she was the one that did most of the discipline, and I needed to, get back in her good graces. So I left home at 17, and from 17 to 52, those 35 years, I spent essentially in isolation. I never talked to anyone about what I felt. I believed with all my heart that I was the root of all evil, And I did not do anything that I wanted to do in life. And I mean, career wise, I wanted to do music. I was an artist and a musician, but I pursued a corporate career because that's what I was supposed to do. I struggled with depression. I was in and out of rehab, as I mentioned, a number of times. And on the outside, I looked okay because they made a lot of money. So I had a very, very successful appearing career, but behind the scenes, I was a disaster. So what that meant is I was married and divorced 3 times. I made a lot of money, but had drug problems. And at one point, I was a $3,000 a week cocaine addict. And I attempted suicide a couple times. And all that came to an end in 2007 in August. So, August of 2007, I came home from work on a Friday night. I was single for the third time. I had 4 of my 10 children living with me who were teenagers. 3 were grown up and married, and 3 were living with one. I hate saying this because it sounds gross, one of my exes. And so I came home. I was going to go party for the weekend, and I was using all kinds of substances, but mainly cocaine at that point. And that Friday night, suddenly, before I went out to party, which would have been the whole weekend, I had an urge to turn on the television. Now, that doesn't sound like anything, because, like, so what? Except when I went to do it, I realized I didn't know how to turn on the TV. I'd had the biggest, coolest stuff installed, but I wasn't a TV watcher. So I didn't know how to turn it on. So I asked one of my daughters to turn it on, and, she grabbed the remote and turned it on, threw it at me. And it landed on a program titled Intervention. And I'd never heard of it, but maybe some of your listeners have. It's a reality TV show where people stage interventions for busted loved ones, right? And this particular episode was a high-ranking executive with a cocaine problem. So I watched about 10 minutes of it, and I thought, yeah, screw this. I'm not watching this crap. So I turned it off and did some other stuff for maybe 15, 20 minutes and was literally on my way out the door to go party, and I had this urge again to turn on the TV that I couldn't explain. So I did. I turned it on again. Now this time I knew how. So I turned on the TV, and that program started over in the middle of the hour. And no, I don't have a DVR, and no, it wasn't on the schedule, and no, it can't do that. I get it. So it did, and I thought, holy crap, I guess I'm supposed to watch this. So I did. And it went badly. The guy yelled at his relatives, didn't accept help, and went poorly and everything else. But it freaked me out so much that I didn't go out. I went to bed. When I went to bed, I went to hell. And what I mean by that is I don't know where I was, but I felt like it was somewhere out of body and like I was in some kind of a large theater, the only person there. And on the stage was this drama that unfolded that was all the suffering that had been part of my life, starting when I was little and all the suffering that had been inflicted on me, and then up to the present day, including all the suffering I had inflicted on everybody else with my failed relationships and my addictions and everything else. And I can't even express in any way the amount of pain that I experienced just watching that drama. And after it all unfolded, for some long period of time, a soft voice simply said, "It is enough." I woke up and the sun was shining in the window, which was weird because the window faced west. I got up and realized it was 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon. So I'd been somewhere for nearly 18 hours. And I realized that I'd been invited to change. So I got up and I threw $1,000 worth of stuff, cocaine, that I had laying around, because I always did, and thought, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I have no idea how to do this. I have no idea how to start, but I'm done. So I quit everything in terms of addictions, cold turkey, straight up that day. $3,000 a week to zero in one day. Wow. And that was the first half, because that got me sober, but it didn't do anything about the depression, which I still, at that point, at 52, had never talked to anyone, and this conviction that everything was my fault. The second half of the other shoe, I guess, fell 2 weeks later in the position I had, because I was a, whoop-de-doo big dog. I used to get a lot of free stuff free tickets to this and free box seats to that and free gifts because people wanted to be nice to Kellan, right? Other company presidents and that sort of thing. One of the things I got were 2 tickets to see a Yo-Yo Ma concert. Now, if you know classical music, you know who that is, and if you don't, you don't. But in the classical circles, he's like, oh. So I thought, holy cow, I'm single again. It'd be really a shame to waste this other ticket. So I asked in the groups that I managed who likes classical music, and some lady in one of the groups said, well, I do. I looked at her and I said, have I ever given you anything before? And she said, no. I said, okay, fine, here, see you there. So we met at the venue. The concert was spectacular, and halfway through, I had this feeling come over me. I got to remember, I'm 2 weeks, stone, cold, sober at this time, and this voice said in my head, you need to marry this woman. And I said, you are insane. I said, I've screwed that up 3 times already, officially, with some other messes in between. I said, that's just not happening. Later that night, we were backstage because, of course, they were backstage passes. And the feeling came back and said to me, comma, and you need to tell her tonight. And so I argued like crazy. I thought, that's ridiculous. She's going to have me arrested for harassment or whatever. Come on. No, that can't work. But you don't win those arguments. So I did. And it went about like you would have expected. Are you out of your mind? But she didn't call the cops. Yay. And a couple of weeks later, she'd had her own set of experiences, and she resigned from her very nice career. I walked away from millions of dollars of contracts. We sort of walked off into the sunset together. And 2.5 months ago, we celebrated our 14th wedding anniversary. So,
Wow.
I mean, the incredible nature of the story aside, the reason that was so important is because one was the addictions, and part two was this angel that was sent to help me for the first time in my life learn how to be a person, how to have a friend, how to talk to somebody. She found me counselors to talk to. She was like, okay, we're fixing this. And I've asked her 1,000 times, like, what on earth possessed you to walk away from your career and into the sunset with a drug addict? Because everybody knew, they didn't know, but they knew. She said, I just knew to the core of my soul it was the right thing to do. So that invitation, the 2 parts of it were what changed my life. And it's important to just add, all it was an invitation. Because neither one of us had any idea what we were going to do or how to start life or what direction we were going to go. Both of us completely left not only the business, but the industry that we were in to start over. And since that time, 2008, the last 14 years, I've created a coaching business, committed myself to helping people discover and serve with their gifts. I've written 16 books, and I coach people all around the world. And as you noted, I have a podcast with a bunch of episodes. And that was the start of the change, and it was abrupt, it was immediate, and it was completely walking out into the unknown, not having a clue about where we were going.
Wow. That is an amazing story. And congratulations on 14 years. Wow. Um it's I this uh it's so amazing that you took the invitation. I think a lot of times we get the invitation because that, like you said, it's just that, an invitation. It's not a command, it's not control, it's an invitation that we can, with free will, choose or not choose. So the creation of the next part of your life, you just walked into it. So what advice do you have for people if they get that invitation but they don't feel ready? They don't feel like they can drop that thing cold turkey.
Well, I'd had 1,000 before. I mean, I knew that the life I was living wasn't okay. It wasn't good. I mean, I'd attempted suicide twice. The most recent one was just a few months before that happened. And so the answer is, I don't know the answer. You're not going to know what to do. And we can always quit. We're always allowed to stay where we are because we're there. The thing that I advise, the most important thing is to learn to love yourself. Like, I don't care where you've been. I don't care where you are now. I don't care what's been done to you or what you have done to others. In the eyes of your creator, you're still important. Like, if anybody would have been a candidate to be left at the bottom of the canyon, it would have been me. And the invitation was extended, and the opportunities to create something aren't magic, and they don't just happen, but the opportunities are there. So after that, we decided, what are we going to do? My wife, oh, by the way, and what I didn't tell you, it's like her name is Joy. Like, you can't make this stuff up, right?
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So, she had a lot of years experience that she'd done on the side is selling stuff online. So she was an antiques and collectibles expert with glassware and stuff like that. So she ramped that up, started selling that. I started thinking, what do I know how to do? I mean, I knew that in my executive consulting years, I'd been really good at solving difficult problems, helping people do things they didn't think they could do. I was kind of the big dog consultant to go do that. So I thought, all right, well, I know how to do that. What is that? Well, I think that's coaching. So what should I do? So I looked that up and I, dug in on what that looked like and decided that that sounds like what I know how to do really good. And it feels good. And I didn't know how to, sell coaching or enroll clients or anything because my executive career was always about that thing over there, like not about me. And here I am barely, out of the jaws of death. And here I am trying to help people. Holy crap. So you don't have to be done with whatever you're working on in order to be useful. One of the myths, especially in the coaching world, is somehow you have to be finished. You don't have to be finished. You have to at least be a serious work in progress. And then your experience and your love is what helps you serve. And so I started working on myself furiously. And I went through the same difficulties. Like, I went through half a dozen counselors and shrinks, the first ones I didn't even know how to tell the truth to. I'd been a liar all my life as a kid to protect myself. I had to learn how to have a friend, how to be a friend, how to tell the truth to myself and everybody else, and all that stuff. And so the advice, start now. Start with whatever you can do. Small steps, big steps. Don't quit. Because quitting goes nowhere. And the other thing is, it's never too late. Like, people have this story, oh, my opportunity's passed, it's too late, I've got this I got to do first. Well, okay, but start.
Wow, for sure. Yeah, and that can be the scariest part, especially coming so soon out of feeling at at that level and having, the cocaine and the negative lifestyle, being so soon to be thrust into that like 2 weeks later with more guidance. So the guidance, and you said that you had many invitations before, but this one was the one that you decided to act on.
Well, yeah, but none of them were with a two by four. They were just sort of feelings that we all have, the yearnings. Come on, every one of us has these yearnings. I ought to be doing something else. I shouldn't do this. I should probably something, right? And then, it's not the right time. Oh, one of the things I do now is I never was an author. I didn't plan on being an author or writing books or doing any of that stuff. All that started after this thing. And then I realized, gee, I do that really good. So I started helping people who have stories to write their books and to, do something with them to turn it into courses or whatever they're going to do so they can help the people they're trying to help. And the story I hear all the time, well, I'm not ready. Well, I don't know. And that's the story we all have. We feel the yearnings, we feel the invitations, and we say, well, and as soon as you hear out of someone else's mouth or your own, well, spoken that way, you can ignore the rest of it because everything that comes after that's crap, right? Because that everything is an excuse, right? We're making up stuff. And so pay attention to those feelings. Like the way I learned to do it is meditation. Take some time every day to be still, to be quiet, right? And to feel into what guidance is available to you. Because I couldn't hear it when my life was noisy and when I allowed the screaming things from my own heart or from other people to be the only force, the dominant voice. So learning to take space, to be quiet and listen is, as soon as I start working with somebody, I get them to start taking time every day. I call it meditation, you call it prayer, meditation, whatever you want. But learning to be still and expect and listen to those invitations is like step one or step zero or something, so you can figure out what your opportunities are.
Right. Wow. So, was it easy for you to embrace the idea of being of service but not being sure? Did you just get ravenous with trying to consume the information and find the path, or did you just allow it to just unfold in front of you?
So it was scary. It was terrifying. I screwed up a lot. I fell down a lot, and no, it wasn't easy. So anybody that might think that somehow Kellan or anyone else was blessed with some magical path, let me assure you that I didn't find it, if there is one. What I knew was that where I had been, my furious, tight-fisted, white-knuckled control of my own goals and destiny and everything else was an abject failure. So, okay, that was clear. Learning to overcome that, to surrender, and surrender is completely different than abdicate. Abdicate is simply, okay, God, do whatever, I'm just going to sit here. That's not the game. The game is to be in motion, to be in action, and to listen every single day for guidance, because it's there. Like, we weren't created to fail continuously. We were created to have experience and to learn to grow, sometimes the hard way. In fact, often the hard way. But there is ultimate opportunity if we're willing to just keep going and keep trying and keep listening. There just is. So no, it wasn't easy. I was scared of writing books at the first time. I wrote a book about my own life called Tightrope of Depression, My Journey from Darkness, Despair, and Death to Light, Love, and Life. I waited a year after I finished it to publish it because I was so scared about what would happen. When I told the truth about what happened to me growing up and what had been going on in my career while I was in those positions of authority, I was scared to death. I finally did it anyway and began to be open, not just about what happened, but about the opportunity for change. And it doesn't matter where you're starting, you can go up. So start, because delaying never accomplishes anything.
Right. For sure. For sure. I actually just pulled up that book, The Tightrope of Depression. That seems like a great read. All of your books seem like a great read, but there's only so much time in the day. You've got so many books, Kellan. So, if we could pick one of your books to be the first that we read, if we're short on time or we don't consider ourselves a reader and all that stuff, which one would you suggest should be our first?
So I will answer that not the way you expect.
Okay.
First of all, there is nothing more important than if you or I want to be of service to our the mission that we agreed to before we came, to help our fellow beings, to help ourselves, we can't serve from an empty cup. So one of the things that I always help people I work with or talk to understand is taking care of and loving yourself is not selfish or wrong. It is required, because you can't help me if you have nothing to give. And I can't help you see your divinity, learn to meditate, trust your guidance if I don't practice that every single day. So I don't have time for time management is an old joke that people used to say in work, right? I don't have time for that time management crap.
Right.
I don't have time for a morning ritual. I don't have time to prepare myself every day. I don't have. Okay, you're free to go at your day every day half baked. How effective are you? I start when I teach this, I start with 10, 10, 10, 10, 4 blocks of 10 minutes with something I call SPEM, spiritual, physical, emotional, and mental. And those are the four arbitrary, but four areas of life. I don't start my day without my morning ritual, not because I'm trying to prove anything and not because I have to, but because I don't feel good about my mission, purpose, and everybody I talk to unless I do that. I would no sooner skip that than I would run outside here in Edmonton in minus 40 in the winter naked. Like, you just don't do that. Right? So I love my morning preparation. And you ask which book, and the answer would really be, what do you want to do? Like, I have a book, Meeting God at the Door, Conversations, Choices, and Commitments of a Near-Death Experience. If you're interested, and that was unexpected, and that happened in 2018. I got sick. I had a fatal illness. I went to the ICU and died. Okay, if that's something that interests you, then start there. If you've struggled with self-worth and depression or anxiety or one of those things that has kept you from being your best, then Tightrope might be a good place to start. There's a sequel to that called Down from the Gallows. If you're really focused on accomplishing things and you want the best tool that I have for getting goals accomplished, I have a book called The Results Equation, which came from my consulting career, and there's a 5-part process to accomplish any goal. If you really want to write a book or create a course using your experience and stuff, then I have a book called The Story Arc, which is about how to do that. And that's become a fun thing. 3 or 4 times a year, I run a 90-day workshop helping people organize and write their story. So they can, create a book, and I also teach them how to publish and do all the stuff associated with that. So it really depends on what you want to do, which one is, fun or the right one to start with. But take the time. The reason I started on that big long rant after you asked the question, which book, is don't live with all my heart and my greatest love. I invite you to not live with the idea, I don't have time to do any of this stuff. I'm too busy, whatever. Love yourself. In fact, try to imagine how your Creator loves you. And love yourself like that. Because I have discovered, after decades of doing it poorly, that it is from that place that I can love the most. I'm the happiest. I get the most done. I also create the best business. All of the practical things also, my physical health, my financial health, including making money and creating business. All those things are best served when I do these preparatory things and lean into the truth of who I am. And I would invite you to do the same.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, yeah, that was definitely not what I expected, but it's okay. I love that. Thanks for giving us a tour and a little synopsis of each of the books so that, we can lean toward whatever one pulls us or all of them. That's awesome. So, how can we get in touch with you and what are your offerings?
Well, it's fun. When you have a name like Kellan Fluckiger, I can't hide. So as long as you spell my name right, whether you put it in on Google or Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube or Amazon, I'm all over the place. So you're free and invited to connect with me on any of those platforms. Because I get lots of spam messages like we all do, please tell me why you're connecting, like that you heard it here or whatever. And I'm happy to have a conversation and chat. Offerings, I write a lot of books. I have a podcast, as you know, you referred to a couple of the episodes. It's funny how that started. At the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020, 2 years ago now, when the first lockdowns were starting that we're all sick of, and when cases in Europe were exploding, and maybe for 5 minutes we thought, oh no, this is Armageddon or something. Somebody called my wife, who's also my business partner, by the way. She does all of our design. She runs all of our contractors, website. Yeah, she's magic. Yeah, she's an
Yes, she
angel.
is.
How else? But anyway, somebody called her and says, does Kellan have a podcast? Because he was looking for some motivational stuff, and we didn't. But she said, yes. And so she came downstairs and said, we have a podcast. And I said, oh, okay. And so in April of 2020, coming up on 2 years, pretty quick, I will. I started a podcast, and I created it called Your Ultimate Life. And it is created around a simple premise. You can have the life of purpose, prosperity, and joy created by serving with your divine gifts. It's a 15-minute daily podcast, so that's available if people want stuff. Offerings in terms of, I have tons of free stuff, YouTube channel, Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. If people want to work with me and explore coaching, then just reach out on my website and make an appointment. There's no obligation. I have no idea if I can help somebody. In fact, my business plan is up on the wall, and it says I never look for clients. I look for people to love, opportunities to serve, and problems to solve. And so I don't have any idea if I can help someone until we've had 1, 2, 3, or 4 conversations. And we talk about what you want and what you've tried and why you think you're stuck and don't have it. Like, we dig in and see what's going on, and we start working on it. And then if it makes sense and you feel like, wow, this is really helpful, then we'll talk about some kind of arrangement. I don't sell. You can't buy Kellan. What we can do is talk about it and see if a collaboration or working together makes sense.
Awesome. Wow. If that's not just attracting the right person to you, that that's great. That's awesome. So I will definitely link to your website and all the different ways, well, different places that you are in the show notes, just to make it easier for people. And I've really enjoyed our time together today, Kellen. This has been awesome. It's been very off the cuff and just it flowed, feels good. I'm very honored that you decided to reach out to me and to be a guest on this podcast. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, and I want to honor and acknowledge you because, as you mentioned before we started, a podcast is a labor of love. You have a commitment and a choice to lift people's hearts and to bless them. We need a lot of that, and we need a lot more of it. And so I truly, it's an honor to be able to address your guests, to see you and your work. And I love people that have chosen, and that's you here now, to lift and bless the lives of others. And so thank you for who you're being and for your work in this effort.